Tech giant Apple has dug in its heels, refusing to work on extracting personal data from the phone of a domestic terrorist. The head of Apple says it's a privacy issue. The Justice Department says it needs to know what it can so it can fight terrorism. So who's right? On the panel this time around is Cynthia Augello. She's an attorney with the law firm of Cullen and Dykman. Psychologist Bart Rossi is sticking around as well, as is journalist Mustafa Tablani, who is a scientist and journalist here at Ebru TV. And joining us via Skype from Texas is attorney Chris Lewis. Welcome, everybody, to the panel.
Hello.
So let's get to the nuts and bolts of this right off the bat. As an attorney, does Apple have a leg to stand on?
I think what they're doing right now is mostly just for their customers. They're trying to protect their privacy. They're trying to, put up a good fight, because if they don't do that, I think they have a lot of issues, with their customers. So you think
eventually they will acquiesce?
I think they're going to lose eventually.
They will lose, you think?
I think they will.
Okay. Now, I've heard this, Mustafa, again and again. Why can't they just go into this one phone, find out what's in it, leave the data, tell the FBI, and then after that?
Well, there is a little key and the big key. There's a PIN number.
Right.
If you put it right, that reveals a big key. And if you make it wrong, it destroys the key, and then the whole phone looks like a garbage.
Right.
But it's inconceivable that there is an imminent danger to the American public, and there is information in this cell phone that's going to prevent it. And the FBI is sitting on it for 2 months. That doesn't happen. NSA has a massive power. They can clone the data. You can put the phone, you can clone it. If the one clone is destroyed, you go to the next. And they can use lots of power to resolve it. And if they can, they will. But I think they don't want to go in that road. They want to have a shorter way
So
out.
what you're saying is if Apple shows them how to do it or doesn't show them how to do it, that NSA will figure it out anyway. There's no doubt.
No doubt, 100% sure. NSA has a capability to do that. They can easily clone the data and they can work various combinations, but it just takes time and they don't want to do it. They want to have a legal backing so that for the next case, they can get it done much quicker.
Now, Dr. Bart Rossi, the Fourth Amendment guarantees privacy. It's in the Constitution. It's not number 14. It's number 4, which is in the top 5. I think there would be an argument to say that it is private.
Well, I think Apple really has a great case here. I mean, it reminds me of Albert Einstein and the atomic bomb, his concern. I mean, what happens if Apple comes up with a way to get into the phones and everybody is then ill at ease because everything that you do on the phone can be looked at. Everything you've ever done, whatever you've said, whatever you've looked at. I mean, it's very, very invasive and nasty. So I think Apple has a very good point. Personally, I think they're playing their cards pretty well because I think they should make a big deal about it. They shouldn't just comply. On the government side, though, I do think they have a point. We have terrorism, and we want to be able to get into these phones and certainly make some sense.
But then you have the Fourth Amendment.
Then we have the Fourth Amendment. So I don't think this is an easy one. I come down a little bit more on the government because I'm so sensitive about terrorism, but I think that Apple has a really good case going here.
All right, let's go to attorney Chris Lewis via Skype in Texas. Chris, do you agree with Cynthia Augello here, another attorney, that eventually the government will win this one?
No, I don't agree at all, and I think there's something bigger in play here. Obviously, we're very sensitive as Americans to terrorism that's occurred here, that might occur in the future, but what we can't forget is that the Constitution's in place for a reason. The Bill of Rights is in place for a reason, and if it says nothing else, it says that the end does not justify the means. With that being said, I think Apple has a great leg to stand on because what they're not, and if the NSA can do it, let the NSA do it. But what Apple has said is that we are not willing to risk our millions and millions and millions of customers and their sensitive data in order to work on this one case, in order to make our systems and our protocols and our security weaker. And that's exactly what the government's doing. The government has tunnel vision on this one. They want them to work on this one case to the exclusion of everything else. This is the classic, the end justifies the means.
All right,
Apple wins.
Let me hold you right there. Mustafa, good question there, and a lot of good issues being brought up. But why can't the NSA figure this out? I mean, they have some smart minds there. Why can't they crack the code?
Well, they can, and I'm sure that they already did. But for the next time, they want to have it quicker. next time when they get a phone, they want to get this information in a minute.
So you're saying they probably know what's in that phone already?
I'm 100% sure that they do.
But they're making a point here where they want to maybe have Apple go along with them, have the U.S. public understand that they can do it, and get it faster.
Yeah, and when you get the court order, then that is an example. So the next case, they can just get it done in a couple of minutes.
All right, Counselor, you've heard all the arguments here. You still stand by your...
Absolutely.
Why do you say the government, in opposition to Chris, who says that the Apple has a wonderful case?
I do not think they have a wonderful case. I think that at the end of the day, you need to balance the needs for national security versus the individual rights. And I think at the end of the day, while I believe individual rights are extremely important, I think you're dealing with potential terrorists here, and if there is some sort of a link and they're having some sort of communications, that the government has a right to know and they should know.
And the government has brought up Paris again and again, where these terrorists were communicating by encrypted information, Dr. Bart Rossi, and they wreaked havoc in Paris, obviously. That is a case in which they said they really needed the information. I mean, that's a strong argument as well.
There's strong arguments on both sides of this case. I think there has to be some kind of a compromise, some kind of a way where Apple assists, but I do think it's very dangerous to have somebody come into play here that can be so invasive where everything that you've ever done or said is brought against you. And I think that might be a bigger case. I agree that, you know, when it comes to terrorism, we really don't want to hold back. But when it comes to privacy and our rights, that again, it's the
Well,
Fourth
Mustafa
Amendment.
wants to jump in here.
Yes, people don't realize that once this is established, your bank information can be hacked too. So right now, if you lose your phone, all your bank information, credit card information will be erased if someone tries it way too many times. And you don't need to change your passwords, pins, etc. But if United States establishes such an operating system, then sooner or later someone's going to hack it. And sooner or later, hackers are going to get this, and then
Your banking information will be at risk.
and they're going to extract this information from the.
All right, let's go to Chris Lewis again via Skype from Texas. My question would be, and this goes to our previous panel, does this have the possibility of ending up at some point before the U.S. Supreme Court, in your opinion?
You know, I don't know. So what's happened on the petition that the government initially filed? It gives Apple 5 days in order to respond, and I think that, or 5 business days, which goes into next week, and I think that we're going to see that. Here's the better question. All we're concerned about, and all we're talking about, is the United States and terrorism here in the United States. But Apple is a global provider. Is Apple then going to be required to say no when the Russian government says we need help with terrorists here, we need help decrypting phones here? What about the Chinese government? What's Apple going to say to the Chinese government? Or is this exclusive to the United States because this is a United States company? There's global implications here. There's implications that go beyond San Bernardino in one instance. That's why I think that the discussion is much broader than what we're giving it credit for right now.
Well, let me ask a silly question. What if you used a different phone? What if I'm a terrorist and I'm not going to use an Apple phone? I'm using a different operating system.
Well, you can actually put a different operating system in the phone.
Right.
And what FBI is trying to do is a lost battle. Someone is going to come up with an operating system that you will not be able to hack.
And we'll be at this point again?
Yes, and you can actually upload an operating system to Apple. Apple doesn't allow it. It's a licensed product. When it's sold, you are required to use this operating system. You are not required to change, and they can terminate the contract if they want to, if they find out, but they will not find out. If a terrorist
Well, if it's a terrorist, he's not going to report that I've changed the system.
No.
Yeah, but you know, I think that at this point in time, based on what we've discussed here today, I don't think most people understand it. I don't think they understand it. It's so broad, so expansive. And that's why I think the government is really going to have a tough time. I agree with what you're saying in terms of being sensitive about, you know, our security, but this is a bigger issue, and I'm not even sure we're covering all the bases. But most people respond emotionally, you know, and they're saying my security, you know, the government and terrorists and jihadists. Well, guess what? There is a Fourth Amendment.
Well, Cynthia, if you were to try this case representing the government, what would be your argument?
I would again, I would hang my hat on the national security issue. I would also hang my hat on the fact that it's just this particular phone. It's not every single iPhone. It's
Which
this
Mustafa
particular
has said,
phone.
once you crack one, you crack them all, essentially.
Right, and I mean that could be the case with any phone. Again, that you know you have that issue with everything else. Apple actually did this to themselves. They knew they've helped the FBI in the past with other issues before the latest iOS or the iOS 8 came out, and then they made this one absolutely unable to be gotten into.
Right.
They knew that this would be an issue, and they still did this.
It's a possibility that they knew that maybe the government overstepped a little bit and was asking for too many. I think Mr. Cook, the CEO of Apple, said the other day, we do this one, and then 2 weeks later we're going to get a subpoena to do 10 more, and it won't end.
And also Samsung may come up with his own one, and
Right.
another Russian company is going to come up with their own OS, and you're going to not allow them to sell it there, but then somebody's going to buy it from Europe and bring it here. So it's a very complicated issue. I agree with Dr. Rossi, and it's a very complicated
Well, let's get
issue.
into the mind of the average American. Are they? You said they're really not paying attention to this, or maybe not don't understand it fully. Do they care about this?
I think they do. I think they will, but I don't think it's all set in. I don't think that they're thinking about the big picture yet. Our initial inclination is to worry about our security and the jihadists and who's going to terrorize us. However, once we get past that, I think the Fourth Amendment and our liberty shines a little bit brighter. And once they start seeing this, I think Americans are going to get very doubtful. They're going to see why Apple is so concerned.
All right, let's go to Chris Lewis. Chris, I'm going to pose the same question that I posed to Cynthia a moment ago, but on the other side. If you're representing Apple in court, you're trying this case, what is your argument?
Well, this is what the government has working for them is an emotional argument. They're going to say these terrorists, they've killed people. By getting into these phones, we can potentially stop more terror. And yeah, the emotional argument always works, but if I'm trying this, I'm appealing to a judge who's weighing competing interests. A judge is going to be emotionally detached and hopefully rule the case based upon the law. And I think the law allows you to look back, to take a detached approach, and to look at the long-range implications of saying get into this phone. It's been said many times already. If they get into this phone, then they can get into other phones, or maybe they're setting up for the next case. That's exactly Apple's argument. If we create this backdoor, if we create a way to get around this for the government, then it is created for this operating system from this point forward, and it compromises all of our security.
All right, Chris Lewis, thank you very much. We're going to wrap up in just a bit. We thank you for your time, but let's go back to the panel for a moment. This is almost reptilian. It's fear. I mean, what the government is saying is you should fear what's out there, and we need to know the information. How much does that play in a decision?
And I think that they're not going to use this for, you know, the run-of-the-mill case. I think they're going to use this for serious cases where they have, you know, serious national security issues.
Do you trust the government to do that, Mustafa?
Well, not in an election year. This is going to be played in election cycles many times, and they're going to argue one way or the other, you know, your enemies of security or whatever. You know, we're going to see lots of arguments during the election.
Well, we're going to give you the last word. Fear rules, or will there be a decision based on the facts of the case?
Probably the facts, because I think even your question about the government. Well, what about hackers? What about anybody getting in and using this against us?
Well, that's a very good question as well, because once the code is cracked, it could either be changed by terrorists so you can't get in, or it can be used by terrorists to get into, as you mentioned, your phone and get all your personal medical information and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going with the government. We spoke with Chris Lewis. He's going with Apple. You guys? You're not lawyers, so I'm not
I'm
going to
not
hold you to it.
one way or the other on one side, but it's a lost battle. You're battling against technology. Technology is going to win.
I think I'm leaning more towards Apple right now.
All right. We thank you very much for joining us. Some of you will be back in the show as it continues. When Fresh Outlook continues, what happened to the civility in the U.S.? We will look at the rise of hate speech in America in a moment.